We will oftentimes wait till the very last moment to make corrective changes. And it doesn't have to be that way. Wisdom tells us, if like we think about Proverbs and like the wisdom writings, we don't have to wait until things become really catastrophic to make important changes. Wise people can see the necessity to work on this stuff and to make certain changes before it ever gets problematic.
Hello, welcome back to Like-Minded Servants with me, Cecil Graves, where leaders and entrepreneurs come to get better every day. Today we have a phenomenal guest with us, an author of a book our local mastermind just consumed in Q4 of 2023. Following those meetings, our group was fortunate to participate in a Zoom call with the author in which he spent 2 hours answering questions, meeting our guys where they were in life, and also letting us in his life a little bit. He is the author of the book, Black Belt Husband, a marriage book for men. So without further ado, let me welcome our guest today, Mr. Quentin Hafner.
Hey, Cecil. Glad to be here, man. Excited to chat with you about all things dudes and marriage.
We're excited to have you. You are why we created this podcast for sure. So you spoke on so many things that we try to represent as men in our community, and I can't wait to get into those questions today with you. But before I do that, though, something so cool I thought about that night listening to you. About a week or so ago, we had Quentin in a Zoom call with our mastermind. It's guys, there's about 20 or 30 guys here that are business owners, leaders, fathers, men that want to learn how to do life better at a higher level. And Quentin, I just want to tell you, when you read the Bible, you kind of think of your own things of how things happened, or maybe this is the way they meant it type deal. And then recently, I don't know if you're a fan of The Chosen. Do you watch that series?
No,
The
I
Chosen.
haven't seen it.
Okay. It really put things in perspective. They did a good job for me to go, wow, that's probably how it went, or that's how Jesus did things. And then reading your book, um, somewhat we have a wonder of, is it spun off in our favor sometimes as we read those things, selling ourselves on what you were talking about in your book. But when you came on and being able to hear it from the author and hear you back up what you said, dive into those topics even deeper, and then also listen to how you apply those things in your life weekly or planning your year with your boys and your wife was super impactful. So just wanted to give you that little bit of knowledge, a little bit of feedback, I guess you'd say.
Oh, cool, man. Appreciate that.
Well, before we dive in to some questions, can you tell us a little bit about why you wrote the book and then what men you wrote the book for?
Yeah. So I've been a therapist for a long time now. I don't know how many years, 2 decades. And a lot of my work has been around helping guys in relationships specifically. And over the years, having worked with just a lot of guys, so many clients over the years, I just kept seeing real predominant patterns in relationships, and specifically how guys would show up in relationships. And so I think the book was a a way to get out a lot of my thoughts and beliefs in onto paper and into writing. And then um the marriage helping community is predominantly female. 4 to 1 in the therapy community. It's 4 to 1. The ratio is 4 to 1 female therapist to male therapist. So most of the stuff out there that you're going to read regarding marriage is written by women and for women. And so I wanted to write something by a fairly typical guy's guy for guys. That was kind of
Mhm.
my chief aim to, in writing that book. So something that, just your average guy would be open to reading, because there was so much stuff out there, on marriage, that I just kept saying, none of the guys I know, none of the guys I hang out with would ever read this stuff because it was just way too feminized.
Yeah, even how I told you how we picked your book, there were our pastor at church pitched us 3 books, and, I looked at them and I was like, "Man, how can you just pick on the fly with not knowing a whole lot about them?" He gave us, some cliff notes on them, but yours had the most masculine title, so I said, "Man, let's go with that." I wanna be a black
Okay,
belt in
cool.
something in life, maybe I can do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Don't judge a book by its cover, except this one.
This is the exception you've been waiting for.
Yeah.
Um, well, very cool. Well, I always like, even when I meet with guys, whether it's one-on-one coaching, mentoring, it's a young guy in my office that's just struggling. I always like to know um, about someone's home life, what it looks like currently. I think it would be super helpful for our listeners to hear what yours looks like. So, if you would tell us about your family a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, very cool. So I'm married to my beautiful bride, Hillary. We've been married for 14 years, and we live in Nashville, Tennessee. And we have 2 young sons. I have a 10-year-old named Levi, and I have a 7-year-old named Samuel. And yeah, man. So we are a doing our best homeschool family. And my wife is like a total trooper for taking on the homeschool journey. And yeah, so we have this great little family, really plugged into our church community here in the Nashville area, and just blessed, so blessed, Cecil.
Do the boys, have they started jujitsu with you yet? Do they do that as well?
Yep, they do that too.
Very cool.
And I told my boys there's 2 things they can't quit in life. They can quit anything they want, but they can't quit school and they can't quit jujitsu. They can quit anything else.
You know it'll lead to success as long as they stay with it.
Yeah.
I noticed, since we're talking about the boys for a second, um, just showing that you do actually live this out. You were so pleasant with the flow of those guys at the end of our conversation, because I was gonna try to keep it close to an hour to honor your time, and then it went over, and then all of a sudden around about 8 o'clock, I was trying to wind us down for you. Your eyes, you were looking at the screen, and then all of a sudden your eyes went, like, kind of popped, and you said, "Guys, I got to get my boys to bed." I mean, dad time kicked in, so that was cool to go, dude. The guy is watching his schedule, making sure he's there for his sons at night. I know that's the one of the biggest parts of my son's day is making sure I come in there and read, our daily devotional, and then we read uh, Jocko's book, the Black Book. Maybe discipline equals execution. That's just one day type thought with him. He looks forward to that every day. What do you do with your sons before bed?
Oh, nice. Yeah. Yeah. So we have a similar routine. Um, we read together, sometimes if I'm not in the mood to read, we'll watch some fail videos just to have a good laugh before bed. Um, but bedtime, it is, there's kind of 2 chunks of time that are so important for me with my kids. It's the morning hours. I kind of try to let my wife sleep in. I'm an early riser anyways, and my boys get up early. So we're kind of up together from, 5 to 7 when it's dark out,
Mm.
just hanging out. And then, I'm working throughout the day. And then it's like it's always important for me to be able to put them to bed. So um, I'm notorious for saying no to evening plans. I don't go out at night. I don't go to dinner with friends. I don't do anything at night. If someone invites me out, it's 99% of the time a hard no, because I don't want to miss out on that time. But hey, if you want to go to lunch, I'm game 100% of the time. I'm just not going to go to dinner with you.
That 10 to 2 hours are perfect for any of us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm the same. Since I changed, I heard you talking about your career, same as mine, being really flexible with the family time so that we could install that time into our days. And instead of saying, I want my family life to be better, but I have no plan or there's no actions during the day. It's just kind of a hopeful, hey, maybe me and my wife will pray tonight before we go to sleep. But I did hear a lot of intentionality in what you talked about the other day with your day, and those mornings and evenings are big for me too. Well, let's jump into our next question. I love, and I think once guys kind of get turned to them, self development books. This one was a self-development book, for me and these guys. About 3 or 4 months ago, I wanted to increase my marriage and make it grow. So your book just fell right in line with this perfect alignment. Self-development books in general are for us to read and approve and improve as men or women. Do you think, and since I'm bringing up this topic, do you think most men look at self help books as only needed when something is wrong? Or have you seen a lot more men look to maintain and grow things as they are? I guess the guy that's got the good marriage and the guy that's got the marriage on fire, it's falling apart. Um, was I clear on that or did I chop that up?
Yeah, no, I think I'm getting your question. Yeah, I mean, I I wish I could say that more men read personal development stuff, um, just because they want to grow, not because they're trying to climb their way out of a hole somewhere. But um, I think unfortunately that's just not really that just hasn't been my experience. Now, of course, there's exceptions and anomalies to that, but by and large, um, guys read a lot about business or sales or how to scale their companies, but when it comes to real personal development, it's kind of lower on the list until something happens and they feel like they have to kind of do it. I know that was the case for my own life, and I know it's the case for most of my clients' life. I mean, there was when I have the black belt husband Instagram page, and what I wanted to do with that page was offer tools and resources and helpful stuff for guys before they were in a crisis. And so I created all this content, I have all these coaching programs, and the truth is it was like crickets, man. It was like selling ice to Eskimos. But conversely, um, I also have other programs on there for people that are in, really, hot water, and that stuff does really well. So, I just think it's like I think there's something kind of, human nature about that, that, it's like the guy doesn't address his health until he goes to the doctor, and the doctor says, "Well, if you don't change something, you're going to have, a stroke or a heart attack." And all of a sudden, he's really healthy. I think, I don't know, we could take it up with God someday when we get to heaven, but it seems like, you know, the way that we're wired, or if it's our sinful nature, we will oftentimes wait till the very last moment to make corrective changes. And it doesn't have to be that way. I think we were kind of talking about that before. It's like one of the things that, um, wisdom tells us, if like we think about Proverbs and like the wisdom writings, we don't have to wait till things become really catastrophic to make important changes. Wise people can see the necessity to work on this stuff and to make certain changes before it ever gets problematic. And so if I think if we want to, um, if we think wisdom is an important ethic for us, or if it's a virtue that we want to embody, we want to look at these certain domains of our lives and say, okay, like I want to actively work on this before I really even need to work on this, and that's wisdom.
Yeah, and we talked about this, I guess, towards the end of last year about marriage because I'm going to tell you through the entire year, most of our conversations, even though we're talking about leadership or how to grow a team or how to recruit, it seems like we always got on the topic of marriage, guys struggling in their marriage or wanting to ask questions about what other people are doing in their marriages. And what I started seeing is why if we want to get healthy, we go to the gym. If I want to learn how to lead my team better, I go listen to John Maxwell. If I want to learn how to sell life insurance better, I go get a life insurance salesman and learn from them. I'm intentional every time I see that need. But guys, when we see marriage, we never get past that thought. We think, well, man, they need to do better, or I'm doing my best. I'm working a lot. We justify it, but we don't look at it like that workout or that book to improve instead of, hey, man, this something's not right here. Maybe I could learn how to be better as a husband, or maybe I could learn a little bit more about marriage so that I can actually have a better marriage. So, that's why we went in the fourth quarter to focus on marriage because I said, guys, we need to, chunk the books that we had an idea to do in the fourth quarter, and we need to hone in and figure out how we can be better men for our wives and better dads for our children. So, yes, exactly what you just said. I think probably once a year now we'll be consistent with learning to be better husbands, but I think at least one quarter out of the year we'll always um, dedicate time to learn how to be better husbands together. Probably going to use your book, and at the end of the cast, if you want to talk about the new book you have coming out, I think that would be terrific because these viewers are going to hear this and want to go get your black belt husband book. And then I looked at the title and things to your next book the other day, so we're excited to add that to our lineup as well. Um, we started our podcast um, and our mastermind so that we could go back and help the 19, the 20, the 25-year-old Cecil. So the next question I want to ask you um, is if you could go back and have a conversation with the 24, 25-year-old Quentin, and you were sitting, and I'm him, what would you sit down and talk to me about? Or what would you tell him if you had 30 minutes with him to help him?
I think the place that I would go with my younger self is helping him see the necessity to really reconcile the family of origin trauma that I was carrying around with me. And at 25, I didn't have any awareness around that. I thought that I was fine. I knew I didn't come from a perfect family, but I didn't think it was really that big of a deal. It wasn't really that bad. I mean, I think that's kind of a common sentiment a lot of guys carry. And what I know with so much certainty, and I would just bet all the money that I've ever made, all the money that I ever will make on this truism that your marriage, the success of your marriage will be dependent upon you reconciling your family of origin history. Your willingness to go back and look at the traumas that you've experienced, the small T traumas and the big T traumas, all the things that you've gone through that have shaped you, that have created insecurities in you, that have created fears inside of you, that have uh, negatively impacted your way of thinking and your mindset around relationships and love and people. If that doesn't get reconciled, if that doesn't get looked at, if we don't kind of look under the hood in that way, we have zero chance of having a successful marriage. Now, could we stay married? Sure, but that's not, to me, that's not a successful marriage. Um, Truly having a great marriage full of love and full of intimacy will be dependent upon reconciling the past. And a lot of guys, and I was this way for most of my life too. A lot of guys think that there's nothing to reconcile. They don't even know. It's like we don't know what we don't know. And um and so there's that part, and the other part of that is a lot of guys um have a certain resistance to going back and doing that kind of work because they don't want to judge their parents. This somehow feels like I'm this like there's an indictment against my mom and my dad, and I love my mom and I love my dad, and I know they did the best they could and they did a lot for me, and I'm very grateful. And so why do we need to go back and look at this and talk about this? Because I don't want to have this like negative perception of them. I don't want to have a skewed perception of them in my mind. So I'm not gonna go there. But what is true for all of us, every single person walking the planet, is that we learn how to do relationships. We learn this relational blueprint that's given to us, whether we like it or not. It's given to us from our parents. Now, some of that blueprint is great, and some of that blueprint doesn't work. And so it's really important for us, if we want to be successful in the world of relationships, to identify the parts of the blueprint that doesn't work, and how do we create an upgrade to that blueprint so we're more successful.
Gotcha. And having a lot of grace and forgiveness, I think, because those men and women before us, our moms and dads, they learned from men and women before them. So it's a carry down, what some people might call a generational curse. And it's finally just being Ed Milet says, you got to finally be the one if you want to be it, and change the course of your family forever, change your entire family tree. So yeah, like how, like not, so you're saying not having hard feelings towards your parents, just knowing they're sinful men and women that were just doing their best as well.
Yeah, I mean, and also too, Cecil, it's okay to have hard feelings too. I mean, I
Mm,
remember going through a time where I was very angry at my mom and my dad for what I had kind of illuminated within myself about what happened. But that's okay too. That's all part of the grieving process. That stuff doesn't stick around forever. We just go through those little seasons. And my parents were strong enough to kind of write it out with me. And it's okay to have those feelings. We don't have to be afraid of those feelings. But the main principle is that this is not a judgmental indictment against our parents. Like you said, they came from their own traumas that probably didn't get looked at,
mm,
and our grandparents had their own traumas that never got looked at, and everybody's just kind of been in a certain survival mode, trying to do the best they
mm,
can. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to just bury our head in the sand and say, oh, well, like everything's going to be okay.
mm.
And this is where this, even as a Christian, I think this is really important too, because I think there's a Christian piece in this, like a Christian culture piece in this. A lot of Christian men that I work with, they have a faulty belief that because they have faith in Jesus, that somehow all this stuff is doesn't need to be dealt with. It's like that's not how it works. I wish that was how it works, because I mean, I wouldn't need a job. I go find something else to do.
Mm,
But the analogy is like if you have a broken leg and you come to faith in Jesus, you still have a broken leg that needs a cast, and it needs to be
mm,
set, and it needs healing. And our relational histories and our traumas and our emotional histories, we all have that. We all we all have stuff that has to be tended to. And just because you're a Christian doesn't mean that you don't need to look at that stuff. And the problem is, because the more you hold on to that wrong way of thinking, the more you're going to be not looking at it in the ways that you need to. and it's going to undermine and unravel your relationship. And then you'll even be more perplexed because you'll think, well, what happened? I was a Christian, my wife was a Christian, I thought we had a godly marriage, and it couldn't work because there was stuff that it's like Jesus wants us to heal in order to have a great marriage, and we have to heal, and that's not correlated to our faith in Christ. And I think that's just such an important message for anybody listening to this that comes from a Christian background or has a Christian faith.
Yeah, to be intentional. It's not just going to happen. God appreciates the prayers, but he also appreciates the man stepping up and being a man, making it happen. All right. On the I guess our last question for this episode. This is our second season, our first episode, and Quentin is going to be our first and our second episode. But I definitely felt this next question, and I've seen it a thousand times. Whether it's Christian men, whether you're an unbeliever, whether you're just a 19-year-old that gets out of high school, starts working for Best Buy and gets married. Why is the thought of men hitting the cruise control button once they get married one of our biggest issues in marriage today? You've spoken on, I think, apathy maybe before on this specific topic, but what happened? Why is it so ingrained to us that um, we, chase her and do all these things to get her, and then we marry her, and it's like we sit back in the cockpit of our jet, hit cruise control, and just pray. She better have dinner on the table in the evenings. Better have my clothes done. Like, where did this come from, and why do you think that's one of the biggest issues today?
Yeah, it's another great question. Well, I think it's been, you're asking why is it one of the issues today, and I would say it's been one of the issues probably since the dawn of time, since the fall,
Mm,
and and I think the reason this issue happens and it's so common is because men misunderstand their role in marriage. It's like, what is your role as a husband? Well, most men are going to think about that question in terms of being a protector and a provider. And as long as I go out and I have a good job and I make money and, my kids have clothes and food and, we're living under a roof, then and no one's trying to kill us, so I'm good. Like I'm doing my job. That's my duty. That's my duty. And and it's not that those are not our roles. Those are just parts of our roles, and we have other roles too. And a lot of guys see their role as a husband in that kind of like one-dimensional or two-dimensional way, and it's just a simple way to understand our our role as a husband. And now, if you go back in time, that that two-dimensional role as a husband may have worked a couple hundred years ago. It's not going to work today because there is a certain expectation out of marriage that has transcended that kind of old paradigm.
mm,
And I think that's really good. And I think that's really good because I think as guys, we have so much more to give, like in an awesome way. And like what an incredible responsibility and a privilege to be able to give so much more than just being the simple protector and provider.
mm.
And here, the other kind of irony, especially when it comes to being a protector, is that um it's like a lot of guys, they pride themselves in being a protector. And I always say, well, the truth is you're protecting your wife from the big bad world coming to hurt her, but you actually are the most dangerous person in her life.
Whoa.
You're the one that hurts her, you're the one that scars her. Like you're dangerous.
Mm,
And so if you really want to think about like, well, what does a protector mean? And it's like, can you think about protecting her from yourself? because as much as have that, 9 millimeter, next to the bedside in case the guy comes, the armed robbery happens. Okay, great. But what about the other 364 days a year when you look at her a certain way and you snap at her and you raise your voice and you put her down and you demean her and you minimize her complaints? It's like that is not protection.
Mm.
And so I always like to kind of beckon guys into that as a calling, saying, "Hey, protection also includes protection from yourself." And then we could get into some other rules too about just love and service and nurturance and creating emotional safety with your partner or your wife. Um, and so basically, Cecil, what I'm saying is that, we can really expand, we can really expand what does it mean to be a husband? Because we have not all of us, but a lot of guys have a very simplistic model. And if that model worked, I would say thumbs up, awesome, you're on your way, have a great marriage. But the model doesn't work. And at some point down the road, guys are going to find out that that model doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
there.
that's evidence to, the statistic that, 70% of all divorce is initiated by women. Because you could say whatever you want about that. You could say, well, it's feminism and it's our modern culture. None of that matters. We have to look in the mirror. We have to look at ourselves and say, how is it that I am showing up as a husband that's creating any potentiality for my wife even thinking about a divorce? If she's even thinking about it, I have a problem within myself.
Yeah, and being proactive to be in touch with her, not holding a mental 9 millimeter on her every day when we're supposed to be protecting her mentally. You spoke about guys 400 years ago, and the woman back then was scared to leave anything. She wouldn't even think about it because he was the protection for her and the kids. And I think that evolution, if I'm using the right word for that, over those 400 years, we have, it's been assumed that we have this power, and it doesn't matter how we act. We can act like children, we can act like a boss. It doesn't matter. They have to keep dealing with it. And now we've taken it for granted so long. Now they can leave and go do their own, they can live their own life. They can be independent. They don't need us so much anymore for financially um, or protection. So I think it's hitting a lot of guys now. They're like, well, wait a minute. I mean, this is how my dad and my grandpa. This is how my mom and my grandma were. Why doesn't it work now? So I appreciate you speaking on that. Do you have anything else to add? I know the other night we talked about the way the tribes and things maybe men were 400 years ago. I just feel like I've done the same thing. I've failed, and I've taken it for granted in my marriage as well.
Yeah, there's an assumed kind of power that's kind of bestowed upon men in relationship at the onset of marriage. Historically, that's been given to us, because like you said, women have been dependent upon men to for their survival, for protection and providing. But that's not really the case anymore. And so guys are kind of operating in an old paradigm. It doesn't really work anymore.
Mm,
And it's actually good that it doesn't work because it calls men to offer their wives something even so much more important than protection and providing, which is a real relationship. Because if we think about it this way too, if we hold our value as being protectors and providers, what is that value? My wife could leave me in a heartbeat and she could totally do an upgrade. There's a lot of guys out there that are a lot stronger than me that can protect her a lot better than I can. There's a lot of guys out there that are a lot wealthier than me that can provide a lot better than I can. So
yeah.
where if I see my role as protection and providing, it's kind of a commodity. And
Mm,
so I don't really have a great value. That's why I don't really hold on to those identities that much, because I know that they're not identities worth really holding on to. But the relationship that I can offer my wife, she can't get that anywhere else.
mm,
It's only through me and my uniquenesses and my ability to love her, and that is not a commodity.
Hmm.
And that's the true value of being a husband. It's not protection and providing, because that can be replaced by a million guys walking the planet.
Yeah. Man, I like that. So how can I become more valuable is kind of the mental question they need to ask themselves. It's not the weights, it's not the uh to an extent I would say jujitsu gives a lot of disciplines and paths, but the intentionality in the marriage, um, just taking the right foot and putting it in the direction of picking up even your book to become more intentional. Well, let's wind down this one. Next time, we have some super cool questions, some heavier questions. We're going to talk about masculinity in the household. We're going to talk about how to win your wife's heart back once she's hardened that towards you. We're also going to talk about the sexless marriage. If you're in that part where just nothing happens anymore and you're both roommates, you don't know how to make it better. We're going to dive into those. Excuse me, with Quentin next time. So, as we wrap this up, as always, thank you for listening or watching this show. Please make sure to give us a review today and go share this on any of your social media platforms. You can find us by searching at Like Minded Servants on Spotify, YouTube, or Apple Podcasts. Until next time, let's go serve someone today so we all get better together.